The marinara sauce dripped from my fingers like blood as I stood over Dylan Matthews's unconscious body. 300 students frozen in absolute silence around us. 7 years of combat training, 3 years of calculated restraint, and exactly 2.3 seconds to change everything, but I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Emma Reynolds, and until 45 minutes ago, I was Oak Ridge High School's favorite victim. The ghost girl. The weird one who sat alone, walked alone, ate alone. The one who never fought back, never spoke up, never did anything but endure. What they didn't know, what I'd hidden beneath hoodies and silence, was that I could have killed Dylan Matthews with my bare hands any day of the past 3 years. I just chose not to. Until today. The morning started like every other since freshman year. I woke at 5:30 in the small bedroom above my grandmother's garage, my fingers automatically reaching for the cold metal hanging around my neck. Dog tags. Not mine, they belonged to Master Chief Frank Reynolds. United States Navy SEALs. Retired. My grandfather. The man who raised me after my parents died. Trained me from age 6, and taught me that true strength meant knowing when not to use it. Violence took everything from this family. Emma, my grandmother had said at his funeral 7 years ago, her voice breaking over his flag-draped coffin. Promise me you'll never follow that path. I'd promised, even as memories of our training sessions flooded back the pre-dawn runs through Oregon forests. The hours perfecting joint locks and nerve strikes. The lessons in something he called tactical patience. Even as I remembered the last thing he'd told me before his training accident. Sometimes, little wolf, the greatest victory is letting your enemy think they've already won. The dog tags clinked softly as I dressed in my usual uniform of invisibility oversized gray hoodie, faded jeans, worn sneakers. Nothing that drew attention, nothing that suggested the girl beneath could execute a perfect systema throw or identify 17 different pressure points that would drop a 200-pound man. I grabbed my backpack, the one with the hidden compartment where I kept my notebooks. Not school notebooks. These were different. 3 years of meticulous documentation. Times, dates, witnesses, patterns. Because my grandfather had taught me something else. Intelligence wins more battles than bullets ever will. The walk to school took 15 minutes through Oak Ridge's dying streets. Half the storefronts empty. Their windows reflecting the fog that rolled down from the mountains every morning like a funeral shroud. The lumber mills had been closing one by one since I was little, leaving behind a town that felt like it was slowly suffocating. Only 2 things thrived here anymore, the gleaming Riverdale Psychiatric Institute on the hill, and the culture of cruelty at Oak Ridge High School. I paused at Sam's gas station like always, the bell chiming as I pushed open the door. Samuel Winters looked up from his coffee, his weathered face creasing into the same worried frown he'd worn every morning for 3 years. "Morning, Emma. Morning, Sam." He'd known my grandfather, served with him in Desert Storm, though he never talked about it. Sometimes I caught him watching me with this look, like he was seeing a ghost, like he knew exactly what I was capable of and was terrified I'd use it. "You know," he said carefully, sliding a fresh apple across the counter, "there's always a job here if you need one. After graduation. I mean, somewhere quieter." I pocketed the apple. Sam had been making the same offer for months now. Ever since the incidents at school had escalated. Ever since Dylan Matthews had started getting creative. "Thanks, Sam, but I can't run from this." His jaw tightened. Your grandfather wouldn't want my grandfather's dead. The words came out sharper than I intended, softer. I added, besides, he taught me to finish what I start. And let me know in the comments. Where in the world are you watching from? We love seeing how far these stories travel. Whether you're here for the action, the heart, or both, thank you for being part of this mission. The fog was lifting by the time I reached Oak Ridge High, revealing the faded brick building that housed 800 students and more secrets than anyone suspected. I counted the security cameras as I walked 17 total, but only 11 actually worked. The blind spots had taken me 2 months to map completely. First period was history with Mr. Davidson, which meant relative peace. Dylan had football practice before school on Tuesdays, so I had exactly 43 minutes of safety. I settled into my usual seat in the back corner, positioned so I could see both doors and all windows, another habit drilled in by years of training. Paranoid much, I hadn't heard him approach. Jake Holloway, the new transfer student who'd arrived 2 weeks ago, tall, lean, with the kind of quiet confidence that came from actually knowing how to handle yourself rather than pretending. He moved like my grandfather used to, economical, purposeful. It had taken me 3 days to figure out why his stance, his scanning patterns, the way he never fully relaxed. Military family, probably special operations. Cautious, I corrected, not looking up from my textbook. He slid into the seat beside me, which was unusual. People didn't sit near the ghost girl. It was like I had some kind of contamination field around me. Get too close, and you might catch whatever made me such an attractive target. There's a difference between cautious and tactical, Jake said quietly. The way you entered the room, checked exits, positioned yourself, someone taught you well. My hand tightened on my pencil. In 3 years, no one had noticed. No one had seen through the act. But this boy with his knowing eyes and careful movements had spotted it in 2 weeks. I don't know what you're talking about. He leaned back, casual but not careless. My uncle was Army Rangers, taught me to recognize certain patterns, the way you move. It's like you're conserving energy for something. Like you're always ready, but never wanting to show it. The classroom was filling up now, saving me from responding. But Jake didn't move to another seat. He stayed right there, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something clean and simple. Not the overwhelming cloud of body spray most guys here bathed in. You know, he said as Mr. Davidson started writing on the board. Whatever you're waiting for, you don't have to face it alone. I wanted to laugh, or cry, maybe both, because he couldn't understand that alone was the only way I could face it. That the moment I let someone else in, they'd become a target too. Dylan Matthews didn't just hurt people. He collected them, studied them, broke them down systematically like some kind of psychological serial killer. The thought made my hand drift to my hidden notebook. 3 years of evidence. 3 years of watching him operate with surgical precision, choosing his victims based on some criteria I hadn't fully decoded yet. The quiet ones, the different ones, the ones without strong support systems. He'd target them for months, escalating slowly, documenting their breakdown with an attention to detail that went far beyond typical bullying. His father ran the Riverdale Institute, Dr. Nathan Blackwood, former military psychiatrist, current director of behavioral studies, even at 17. I could connect dots that others missed. The way Dylan's tactics mirrored psychological warfare techniques, the way certain teachers looked the other way, not out of fear but like they were observing an experiment. The way victims would suddenly transfer schools or simply disappear. Class ended without incident. But I knew what came next. Lunch. The daily performance that had become as predictable as sunrise. The cafeteria at Oak Ridge High was a battlefield disguised as a social space. Long tables arranged in rigid hierarchies, with Dylan's crew holding court at the center like some kind of feudal kingdom. I took my usual route along the edges, tray in hand, counting steps to my isolated corner table. 112 steps. That's how far I made it. "Ghost girl!" Dylan's voice boomed across the cafeteria, and I felt 300 heads turn in unison. He was already standing, his varsity jacket like armor, his crew flanking him like soldiers, 6'2", 200 pounds of muscle and malice, with his father's cold eyes and his mother's perfect smile. I kept walking. 113. 114. "Hey, I'm talking to you, freak." 115. Almost there. The first glob of marinara sauce hit me square in the back, soaking through my hoodie instantly. The cafeteria erupted in laughter. Not genuine amusement, but the nervous kind that came from relief. It wasn't happening to them. I stopped, counted to 3, then continued walking. The second handful caught me in the hair, dripping down like some parody of that horror movie everyone was talking about. Still, I walked. This was the routine. This was the dance we'd performed every lunch for 3 years. He'd humiliate me. I'd endure it. Life would go on. But today felt different. There was something in Dylan's eyes, a new intensity that sent warning signals screaming through my trained instincts. He wasn't following the script. I reached my table, set down my tray, and turned to face him. Usually, he'd be satisfied by now, already turning back to his admirers, but he was still approaching. His movements predatory, in a way that made my muscles coil involuntarily. 3 years, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. 3 years of this, and you just take it. Don't you have any pride, any fight in you at all? He was close now. Too close. I could smell the protein shake on his breath, see the calculation in his eyes that had nothing to do with teenage cruelty and everything to do with something deeper, more clinical. "Maybe that's why your parents died," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper only I could hear. "Too weak to protect themselves. Just like your grandfather. Just like—" My hand twitched. Just a millimeter. But he saw it. His smile widened. "There it is." He breathed. "There's something in there after all." Then he did something new. Something that wasn't part of our 3-year routine. He reached out, quick as a snake, his hand sliding under the pretense of wiping sauce from my shirt. But his fingers didn't stop at the fabric. They pressed, grabbed, squeezed hard enough to hurt. "Your grandfather can't save you now," he whispered, his hand still on my chest, fingers digging in possessively while 300 students watched in stunned silence. "No one can." Time slowed. Not metaphorically, my grandfather had trained me for this. Combat time, he called it. When adrenaline sharpened your perception until seconds felt like minutes. I cataloged everything in that crystallized moment, Dylan's weight distribution favoring his right leg from an old football injury. The positions of his 5 friends spread out, but not optimally, leaving gaps. The nearest cameras, 1 directly overhead, 2 at 40-degree angles. The witnesses, everyone. Perfect. But Most importantly, I cataloged the thing that finally, after 3 years, gave me permission to act sexual assault in front of 300 witnesses, captured on multiple cameras. He'd finally crossed the line I'd been waiting for. My body moved before my mind fully decided. 3 years of suppressed training exploding into motion. The technique was pure systema, the Russian martial art my grandfather had learned from Spetsnaz operatives and refined into something even more devastating. No wasted movement, no telegraphing, just pure, efficient violence delivered with surgical precision. My left hand trapped his wrist, thumb finding the pressure point that made his grip involuntarily release. Simultaneously, my right palm struck the inside of his elbow, hyperextending the joint just enough to cause pain without permanent damage. As his body reacted to the dual assault, I pivoted on my left foot, using his own momentum against him. The throw was textbook perfect. His feet left the ground as I redirected his 200 pounds of muscle like he weighed nothing at all. He flew through the air in a graceless arc that would have been comedic if it wasn't so shocking. The crash came exactly 2.3 seconds after he'd grabbed me, his body slamming through a lunch table in an explosion of trays, food, and splintering plastic. Silence. Complete. Absolute silence, as 300 students tried to process what they'd just witnessed. The ghost girl shy, weak. Pathetic Emma Reynolds standing in a perfect defensive stance, while Dylan Matthews lay groaning in the wreckage of what used to be a table. I straightened slowly, letting my hands fall to my sides. Marinara sauce still dripped from my hair. But somehow that only made the moment more surreal, around me. Phones appeared like flowers blooming in fast forward, everyone desperate to capture what happened next. Dylan wasn't unconscious, I'd been careful about that. He needed to be awake for this part. He struggled to sit up, sauce and food covering his precious varsity jacket, his face a mask of shock and humiliation. But behind the surprise, I saw something else. Fear, for the first time in 3 years. Dylan Matthews was afraid of me. "You," he gasped, struggling for air. "You can't. My father." "Your father," I said, my voice carrying in the silence, "is Dr. Nathan Blackwood, director of the Riverdale Psychiatric Institute, former military psychiatrist, discharged under classified circumstances in 2012, currently running something called Project Phoenix, which uses high school students as unwitting test subjects for advanced behavioral modification techniques." The silence changed quality, became something heavier. Dylan's face went white. I continued, my voice calm and clear. "You've documented 14 primary targets over 3 years. Sarah Chen, who transferred after 5 months. Marcus Washington, who developed severe anxiety requiring medication prescribed by your father. Rebecca Torres, who attempted suicide last spring. Should I continue?" "You're crazy," Dylan whispered, but his voice shook. "No," I said. "I'm done being your experiment." Principal Morrison burst through the cafeteria doors then, followed by 2 security guards. His face was flushed, tie askew, looking like he'd sprinted from his office. He took in the scene, me standing calm and collected. Dylan sprawled in the remains of a table, 300 witnesses with phones out, and I saw the exact moment he realized how badly this could go for the school. "Everyone back to class," he barked. "Now." Nobody moved. I said, "Now," slowly, reluctantly. Students began filing out, but I knew it was too late. The videos were already uploading, already spreading. By the end of the day, everyone would know that Emma Reynolds wasn't the victim they'd thought she was. As security helped Dylan to his feet, he locked eyes with me one last time. The fear was still there, but mixed with something else now. Recognition. Maybe. Or respect. He finally understood what my grandfather had always taught me: the most dangerous predators are the ones who've learned to hide their teeth. "My office," Principal Morrison said to me, his voice strained. "Now," I nodded, bending to pick up my backpack. As I straightened, Jake Holloway caught my eye from across the cafeteria. He gave me the smallest nod, one warrior acknowledging another, following Principal Morrison out of the cafeteria. I touched my grandfather's dog tags through my sauce-soaked shirt. Somewhere, I thought, he was proud, not because I'd used violence, but because I'd waited for the right moment, because I'd gathered intelligence, science, documented evidence, and struck only when the law and witnesses were on my side. The war wasn't over. If anything, I'd just fired the opening shot. But after 3 years of being hunted, I was finally ready to become the hunter. And Dylan Matthews had no idea what was coming. The principal's office smelled like old coffee and disappointment. Morrison sat behind his desk, fingers steepled, trying to project authority he didn't have. To his left sat Mrs. Pemberton, the school counselor who'd watched me deteriorate for 3 years without saying a word. To his right, empty chairs waited for the lawyers who were probably already on their way. "Emma," Morrison began, his voice carefully modulated. "What happened in the cafeteria was unprecedented. In 15 years as principal, he sexually assaulted me." I interrupted. "In front of 300 witnesses and at least 3 functioning security cameras, I defended myself using reasonable force to stop an ongoing assault. Would you prefer I hadn't—" Morrison's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "Mrs. Pemberton leaned forward, her expression sympathetic in that practiced way counselors learn in graduate school. "Emma, I understand you're upset. What Dylan did was inappropriate, but violence is never inappropriate." I pulled out my phone, found the video already circulating, and placed it on the desk. "Watch it, frame by frame. Watch him grab me. Watch how long his hand stays there. Watch my face as I calculate minimum force necessary to stop him." They watched. I saw their expressions change as they realized how bad this looked, not just for Dylan, but for the school that had enabled him for years. "We need to—" Morrison fumbled for words. "You need to call the police," I said calmly. "File a formal report. Contact my guardian and probably notify the school board that you're about to be sued for maintaining an environment that enabled systematic abuse of students. Now wait just a minute. I have 3 years of documentation," I continued. "Times, dates, witnesses, not just of what Dylan did to me, but to 14 other students. I have photos of injuries, copies of transfer requests, medical records that were carelessly left in unlocked filing cabinets." That last part was a bluff, but Morrison went pale anyway. People with secrets always assume you know more than you do. The door to Morrison's office burst open before he could respond. Dr. Nathan Blackwood entered like he owned the place, which, considering his influence in Oak Ridge, he practically did. Tall and lean with prematurely gray hair. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most families here made in a month. His eyes swept the room with clinical precision before settling on me. "Principal Morrison," he said smoothly, ignoring everyone else, "I understand there's been an incident involving my son." "Dr. Blackwood," Morrison stood so quickly, his chair rolled backward. "We were just discussing. Dylan is in the nurse's office with a possible concussion. Blackwood interrupted. "I'll be taking him to Riverdale for proper evaluation. As for Miss Reynolds—" His gaze found me again, and I saw my grandfather's killer in those cold blue eyes. Not literally, but the same type. The same institutional arrogance that believed people like me were expendable. "Your son sexually assaulted me," I said clearly. "I defended myself. Everything else is just noise." Something flickered across his face, surprise that I'd spoken. Maybe, or calculation about how to handle me. "That's a serious accusation, young lady. I hope you have proof beyond your word against my sons." I smiled then, not my practiced victim smile, but something I'd learned from watching Predators. 300 witnesses, multiple camera angles, and a documented pattern of behavior that I'm sure the FBI will find fascinating when connected to certain research protocols at your institute. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Morrison and Pemberton exchanged panicked looks, while Blackwood went very, very still. "You're Frank Reynolds' granddaughter," he said finally. It wasn't a question. "I am. He trained you well." "He trained me to recognize patterns, to document everything, to wait for the perfect moment." I stood, shouldering my backpack. This was that moment. "Sit down," Morrison squeaked. "You're suspended pending investigation. 3 days minimum." "Perfect," I said. "That gives me time to organize my files for the federal investigators. Unless you'd prefer to expel me, I'm sure the media would love that angle assault victim punished while attacker walks free." I left them there, frozen in their calculation of damage control. The hallway was mostly empty, just a few stragglers rushing to class. But Jake Holloway was waiting by my locker, casual as if he belonged there. "That was beautiful," he said quietly. "The throw, Sistema. Modified. My grandfather cross-trained with some Russians in the 90s. I spun my combination, grabbing only what I needed. The important stuff was never kept at school. You know they'll come at you hard now. The Blackwoods don't just have money, they have connections. I'm counting on it." I closed my locker, turned to face him. "Why do you care?" Jake's expression shifted, became older somehow. "My uncle didn't just teach me to fight. He taught me to recognize when someone's fighting a bigger battle than they show. You've been planning this for years, haven't you, since the day they killed my grandfather?" The words hung between us, heavy with implication. Jake nodded slowly. Decision made. "What do you need?" "I need to get to Sam's without being followed. And I need someone who can dig into Riverdale's computer systems without leaving fingerprints." The second part's easy. Noah Jang and sophomore comp sci kid's a genius. Dylan locked him in a supply closet overnight freshman year. He'd love some payback. Jake pulled out car keys. As for the first part, my truck's in the back lot. 20 minutes later, we pulled into Sam's gas station. The old Marine was already waiting, arms crossed, expression grim. He'd seen the videos. Everyone had. "Inside," he said curtly. "Both of you." The back room of Sam's station was exactly what you'd expect, boxes of inventory. A scarred desk. The smell of motor oil. What you wouldn't expect was the hidden panel that opened to reveal a staircase going down. "Your grandfather built this during the Cold War," Sam explained as we descended. "Paranoid bastard thought the Soviets would invade through Canada." The basement was a cross between a command center and a conspiracy theorist's dream. Maps covered the walls, connected by red string, photos, documents, newspaper clippings, and at the center, a corkboard labeled Project Phoenix in my grandfather's blocky handwriting. He knew, I breathed. He more than knew, Sam said. He was investigating it when he died. That training accident, Frank could run those drills in his sleep. Someone wanted him quiet. Jake whistled low. This is bigger than high school bullying. Dylan's not a bully, I said, studying the connections. He's a test subject and an operator. Look, I pointed to a cluster of photos. 17 schools across the country, all with similar patterns. Athletic students with connections to military or intelligence families targeting specific personality types. The victims either break, transfer, or they disappear, Sam finished. Frank tracked 12 kids who simply vanished from records. Families moved. No forwarding addresses. My phone buzzed. Unknown number, but I recognized Noah Jang's nervous voice. Emma Jake said you needed help. I'm in, whatever it is. But you should know Dylan's house has some serious electronic security, like government-level stuff. Can you get around it? Already did. Pride crept into his voice. Turns out, his little brother Hunter hates him as much as everyone else. Kid gave me his login codes. I'm downloading everything now. My grandfather always said that every enemy makes 3 mistakes. Dylan had just made his second underestimating the people he'd hurt. His first was touching me. His third would come soon enough. Over the next 48 hours, we built our case. Noah worked his digital magic, pulling terabytes of data from Riverdale's servers, security footage of therapy sessions that looked more like interrogations, email chains discussing behavioral modification protocols and preference cascade modeling, financial records showing government contracts with code names like MindBridge and Cognitive Dominion. But the worst part was Dylan's personal files, videos of his victims, annotated with clinical observations. Subject displays increased cortisol response to social isolation. Sleep deprivation protocol shows promising results in compliance enhancement. Sexual humiliation produces faster breakdown in female subjects aged 15 to 17. Jesus, Jake muttered, watching over my shoulder. This is MK Ultra level stuff. Worse, I said. MK Ultra was sloppy. This is refined, generational. They're not trying to create assassins, they're creating a compliant population. Start with teenagers, the most socially vulnerable. Break them or recruit them. Either way, you win. The turning point came when Hunter Matthews showed up at Sam's station at 2 in the morning. Looking terrified. Dylan's younger brother was 14, skinny where Dylan was built, with haunted eyes that belonged on someone much older. He's going to kill me for this, Hunter said, clutching a flash drive. But I can't. What they're doing is wrong. What they did to Sarah Chen was wrong. What they're planning for Phase 3 is insane. What's Phase 3? I asked gently. Mass deployment, social media integration. They've figured out how to trigger preference cascades, basically mob mentality, through targeted psychological pressure points. Make people believe things that aren't true. Change their memories of events. It's supposed to launch next month at all 17 sites. I took the flash drive, my mind racing. This was bigger than revenge now. This was about stopping something monstrous before it spread. Hunter, I said carefully, would you be willing to talk to federal investigators? He nodded, tears streaming. I have recordings. Dad doesn't know, but I've been documenting everything, just like he taught me, except I was documenting him. Every predator makes 3 mistakes. Dylan's third was believing his brother's compliance meant loyalty. The FBI raid came at dawn on my 3rd day of suspension. 17 simultaneous operations across the country, coordinated to prevent anyone from warning the others. I watched from Sam's shop as black SUVs surrounded Riverdale Institute. Agents in tactical gear sweeping through the building. Sheriff Mitchell, who'd been Blackwood's puppet for years, turned state's evidence the moment agents showed him what we'd found. His daughter had been one of Dylan's early targets. The shame in his eyes when he admitted to covering up complaints would haunt me. But I understood. They'd found his weakness and exploited it. That's what predators do. By noon, the story was national news. Operation Mindbridge. Federal agents uncover nationwide psychological warfare program targeting teens. The footage of Dylan's arrest was particularly satisfying, dragged from his house in handcuffs. No longer the alpha predator, but just another criminal who'd mistaken power for invincibility. But the real surprise came that evening. I was sitting in Sam's back room, exhausted but unable to sleep, when a black town car pulled up outside. The man who stepped out moved with military precision, despite being in his 70s. Admiral James Hargrove, retired, my grandfather's commanding officer. "Emma," he said simply when Sam let him in. "You did good, sailor." "I'm not a sailor." "You're Frank's granddaughter. That makes you Navy in my book." He set a briefcase on the table. "I've been tracking Phoenix for 7 years, ever since your grandfather was killed. Couldn't move officially, too many people involved, too high up. But you gave us the opening we needed." He opened the briefcase, revealing documents stamped with classification levels I shouldn't have been able to see. Phoenix was just one tentacle. The real program, Cognitive Dominion, has roots going back to the 50s. Generational conditioning, they call it. Shape the children. Control the future. So it's not over. It's never over, but you've cut off a major branch, saved hundreds, maybe thousands of kids from what you went through. He pulled out a metal case, opened it to reveal a bronze star. This was your grandfather's. He'd want you to have it. I took the medal with shaking hands. He never told me he had this. Frank didn't believe in glory. He believed in duty, just like you. Hargrove stood. "There's a place for you at Annapolis, if you want it. Full scholarship, your choice." After he left, I sat alone with my grandfather's medal and my mother's photo, the one Sam had quietly placed on the desk while Hargrove was talking. 3 generations of fighters, each in their own way. My phone rang. "Jake." "Turn on Channel 9, he said. The news was interviewing students from Oak Ridge High. Madison Chen, Sarah's younger sister. "Emma saved my life. Dylan was starting to target me the same way, but after what happened in the cafeteria, I found the courage to speak up." That is Marcus Washington's mother. "We had no idea what was happening. The school kept saying it was just normal teenage stuff. If Emma hadn't exposed this, even some of Dylan's former crew were talking. The spell broken now that their leader was gone. They spoke of pressure, of being forced to participate, or become targets themselves. It didn't excuse what they'd done, but it explained the mechanism of complicity. The last interview stopped my breath. A woman in her 40s, graying hair, tired eyes, Rebecca Torres's mother. "My daughter tried to take her own life last spring. She's alive, thank God, but she never told us why. Now we know. Now we can help her heal." I turned off the TV and cried for the first time in 3 years. The next morning, I returned to school. The suspension had been lifted. Morrison was too busy trying to save his job to maintain punitive measures against the student who'd exposed a massive conspiracy. The hallways felt different, lighter. Somehow, kids nodded at me, some with respect, others with lingering fear. Both were fine. I hadn't done this to be liked. Jake met me at my locker. "So what now? Back to being the ghost girl." "No," I said. "That was camouflage. I don't need it anymore." "What do you need?" I thought about it. To finish senior year, to make sure the other kids recovering from this get support, to figure out who I am when I'm not hiding or hunting. "Sounds like a plan." He paused. "For what it's worth, I think your grandfather would be proud. You didn't just expose them, you did it smart, legal, with evidence and witnesses." He taught me that revenge is a dish best served with a side of federal indictments, I said, managing a small smile. Over the following weeks, the full scope of Project Phoenix emerged. Congressional hearings, Senate investigations, dozens of arrests across multiple agencies. Riverdale Institute was shut down, its victims finally free to speak their truths. Dylan was charged with sexual assault, criminal harassment, and conspiracy to commit psychological torture. Turns out that's a real charge when you document your crimes as thoroughly as he did. His father faced federal prosecution for human experimentation without consent. Among other charges, both would spend years in prison, their own psychological profiles now the subject of study. But the most surprising outcome was Hunter Matthews. Free from his father's influence, he became an advocate for other siblings of perpetrators, speaking about the complex trauma of growing up in such households. We stayed in touch, united by the strange bond of having survived the Blackwood family in different ways. We are not defined by what happens to us, but by how we respond. We are not victims or survivors, we are warriors, each in our own way, and sometimes the greatest act of war is choosing the right moment for peace. In the audience, my grandmother wiped away tears. Sam stood at the back, proud as any father. Jake sat with my new friends because I had friends now, people who saw my scars and chose to stand beside me anyway. As I left the stage, I touched my grandfather's dog tags one last time. Somewhere, I knew he was watching. The little wolf he'd trained had finally grown teeth not to devour, but to defend. The war against those who would manipulate and control wasn't over. It never would be. But I'd learned the most important lesson of all. The Phoenix had burned, but from its ashes, hundreds of us were rising. 6 months later, I stood in the rain outside Arlington National Cemetery, fingers tracing my grandfather's headstone. Master Chief Frank Reynolds, USN. The inscription was simple, but I'd had them add one line: teacher, protector, hero. "I know you can't hear me," I said quietly, "but I did it. Not the way you might have wanted, you always preferred direct action. But I did it smart, like you taught me, legal, documented, undeniable." The Phoenix Files had revealed something that both broke and healed my heart. My grandfather had known he was likely going to die. His final report, encrypted and hidden in the bunker Sam maintained, showed he'd discovered the kill order 3 days before his accident. But instead of running or striking back, he'd spent those days setting up safeguards for me, trust funds hidden from prying eyes, training protocols recorded on video, letters to Sam and Admiral Hargrove asking them to watch over me. A hand touched my shoulder. Jake had driven me here, understanding without being asked that I needed to make this pilgrimage. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, and meant it. Just saying goodbye properly this time. We walked back through the rows of white stones, each one a story of sacrifice. My phone buzzed, Noah sending updates about the Phoenix Survivors Network we'd started. 3,000 members already, kids from all 17 sites sharing their experiences, supporting each other, reclaiming their narratives. "You know," Jake said as we reached his truck, "I've been thinking about what you said in your speech, about choosing the right moment for peace. When does that moment come?" I considered the question. When the war's won, when justice is served, I don't know. Maybe peace isn't a destination. Maybe it's just moments, little victories between the battles. Speaking of battles, he pulled out an envelope. "This came to the school for you yesterday. Figured you'd want it." The return address made my pulse quicken. United States Naval Academy. Inside, past the acceptance letter I'd been expecting, was a handwritten note from the Commandant, Miss Reynolds. "We've followed your actions with great interest. Your grandfather served with distinction. But more importantly, he understood that the greatest battles aren't always fought with weapons. You've proven you inherited more than his training, you inherited his wisdom. Should you choose to join us, know that the Navy needs officers who understand that strength comes in many forms, and that sometimes the most powerful warrior is the one who knows when not to fight. Fair winds and following seas." I folded the letter carefully. Decision already made. Not because of tradition or legacy, but because there were more phoenixes out there, more programs hidden in shadow, more kids who needed someone to see their pain and say, "Enough." My grandfather had taught me to be a weapon. Life had taught me when to use it. But the most important lesson had come from an unexpected place, from 3 years of calculated patience, from watching Dylan and learning that the most dangerous predators often wear the nicest masks. The rain was letting up as we drove away from Arlington, heading back to Oak Ridge. In my pocket, the dog tags clinked softly against my grandfather's bronze star. 2 generations of warriors. Different battles. Same war. The phoenix had burned, but I was still rising. And this time, I wouldn't be rising alone.